All right, let's move on because we got about 10 minutes. So we're going to move on to how does that land deal that was made by Johnson affect the world today? So what did you say, Tracy? Over 200 plus years now that we're
More than
still dealing
two.
with this. Let's see what the effects of 200 plus years later.
Jamaica. By 1833, slavery was abolished throughout the British Empire. But instead of compensating formerly enslaved people, Britain provided reasonable compensation to slave owners through a then £20 million loan, which British taxpayers fully repaid in 2015. According to one estimate, that's worth over 20 billion British pounds today. For decades, descendants of enslaved people have been fighting for reparations in these regions, and in 2013, several Caribbean countries united to form the CARICOM Reparations Commission, which developed a strategy for reparations that focuses on reparatory justice.
The 10-point plan begins with the demand for an apology,
which is followed by calls for repatriation, an Indigenous Peoples Development Program, eradicating illiteracy, and debt cancellation, to name a few. CARICOM has sent letters requesting reparations from countries like Spain, France, Britain, and the Netherlands.
The response was negative for the most part. No country admitted to the wrong, no country took responsibility, no country apologized, no country committed to repair.
Today, we're still living with the legacies of colonialism and enslavement that have left Black populations across the globe at a disadvantage.
There is definitely a case that can be made that there has been a global pattern of exploitation of people of African descent.
We're here to demand what's owed to us from the United States government.
And despite incremental progress and different approaches to reparations programs, people across the Americas continue to fight for redress.
Right now, this is a contentious issue. It's affecting relationships, world relationships, global relationships, country versus country disputes exist. I think reparatory justice would help the society to heal itself. Both people of African descent, African people, and European people. I think it will be good and beneficial to all of us.
I just wanted to concentrate on the $1 million investment provided you with $1 billion, and honestly, probably more. You know, my opinion only. I don't think you can measure it. You came up with, what was it, 20 billion? In America, it was 20 billion pounds. In America, it was 65 billion. Honestly, just me using my common sense, and my common sense may not be the greatest in the world, I don't think you can measure it. I think there's no way of measuring that. You can measure what you put into it, but I don't see how you can measure what came out of it. You're muted. Or you say something.
Nah, I didn't want to interrupt you because I'm notorious for that, so I'm sorry.
That was it. Just to know. Just to know that, like I said, there's no new problems. Same problems, same solutions, no results.
So what I was going to say is, no, you can't. No, any number you come up with is not going to be sufficient, right? I mean, let's just be real, because you're trying to quantify human experience. But that's not what I'm asking for. That's not what many of the people who are involved in the reparations discussion are asking for. We're not asking for there's a number, and if you meet this number, then we fixed everything. We're just saying, make a sincere, genuine effort to allow for reparatory, correction, right? So it's not, how do I put it? So first of all, one thing I think is really important in the reparations discussion is to acknowledge what reparations even means, depending upon who you're talking to. So when I speak of reparations, I am not talking about a one-time cash settlement deal and there we go. That's not what I mean. Okay, so I am of the school of thought when it comes to reparations. Yes, there is a cash component because people today are suffering the legacy effects of not having, right? So the opposite of rich is poor. The opposite of advantage is disadvantaged, right? There's not some parity that exists in the middle that is an opposite situation, right? So in order for wealth to exist, there must be inequities, there must be poverty. So there is a cash component because that is what is necessary to bring people who are living today forward, to bring them out of that situation. But if we truly want to talk about reparations, it's more along the lines of what Malcolm X also intoned. He was speaking about being stabbed in the back, right? It only takes a moment to create the wound. And taking the knife out, right? A one-time payment, taking the knife out, that doesn't heal anything. That's the first step to allow for healing to begin. But there's work that has to be done. You know, you got to clean the wound. You got to suture the wound. You got to help it heal. There's effort that goes behind this thing. So if you've had, I'm just going to use 300 as the number. If you've had 300 years of inflicting pain, then you need to put something in place that's going to run. I don't know what the number would be. Maybe it's 100 years. Maybe it's 150 years. I don't know. But you put something in place to help people catch up. And just the money alone is not going to do it, because what was lost during the period of time that we're talking about is not just money, it's opportunity, right? So as an example, what is it? I believe it's the state of, it's either Oregon or Oklahoma. I don't remember which one it was. But Black people couldn't even own land there until the 1920s. I'm sorry, 1920s. So that means any natural resources, any businesses that were developed, any infrastructure that was made that is owned by people ain't owned by any other. That's an opportunity cost, right? You don't get to give me money today and I get to start a, what's a big company? Coca-Cola tomorrow. There's an opportunity cost there. So you have to put something that is not purely a monetary thing in place to bring forward people, right? You settle up a little bit financially, well, a lot bit financially, right? You'll be making a whole lot of us millionaires. But that's a one-time thing. Once that family gets it, they do good with it or they don't do good with it. That's their problem, right? Which is also kind of fair, because white people that we like to compare ourselves to, some of them got windfall gifts from the government, and some did well with it and some didn't. That's why you can't let people get you into the personalizing argument of my family, my family, my family, because they may come from a family where the dad was given a farm, but because he was too lazy or he was an alcoholic or whatever the situation was, he lost the farm. So now they've always been poor. And then they'll say, well, wait a minute, we never had anything. No. You didn't manage it well. Okay. What I'm saying is give us the opportunity to manage or not manage it well. We've never even been given the opportunity. And for the people who are against any cash payment on reparations for Black people, because they say, well, we're just going to spend it. That is the most patriarchal, insulting thing. Like, who are you to tell somebody else how to spend their money? So that part needs to happen. But then I would also say there's things like endowments. You got to endow the HBCUs the same way that we have endowments set up for Yale, Harvard, and so forth. I would even say there may be a different tax scale or no taxes for a certain period of time for those who qualify. That you would have to make sure that the financing is there. I actually advocate for starting within the SBA because you use existing infrastructure. Small Business Administration, where there would be an entire department that all they do is manage that for the American descendants of slavery. And you look at that, and we have the ability to go and file and get approved for grants and loans and business startup. There are things you can do that literally cost you almost nothing, right? The money would be a forward-facing thing. But so long as we allow the conversation to be about dollars and cents, now you can have that classic black-white argument. Well, why do I have to pay for something I had nothing to do with? Why am I being punished? My family never hated black people. We're from Maine. Fuck out of here. You know what I'm saying? Like
random state. Okay, Maine.
Well, I just named that because like they're far above the Mason-Dixon line, right?
I get it.
Yeah, I know, but I'm like,
exactly
not New York, not Connecticut,
like,
Maine. Okay.
You from where? I'm from North Carolina. What's your point?
Well, yeah, I mean, but the reason I said Maine, and there's a lot to it, right? Because like Tracy just hit on. Because if I had said New York, guess what? New York was fully complicit in the slave trade.
Sure was.
They had the slave trade in New York. Seneca Village is now Central Park, right? Slavery was global. It was a whole country. the whole thing, right? Out west, like literally just go back and look at how the states became states. And you'll see that it got into the horse trading of, well, wait a minute, if we're going to have a free state, we got to have a Confederate state. You know, that was how the states are in there, and it still feeds forward. This is why America still has colonies. This is why we call them territories, but this is why we still have colonies. Because in order to make them states, there would be a jockeying of who's going to be a Democrat or a blue state, who's going to be a red state.
Well, you know,
it's the same argument.
They're not going to be states. Can we settle that argument now?
But I'm saying, Tracy, that's why they're not. Yeah. The reason they're not is the same reason they didn't let certain states be states in the past, because they broke the Dakotas into a North and a South, because in order to keep it from throwing off the balance of power in the Senate, they had to turn around and say, well, wait a minute, one of you could be a slave state and the other one has to agree to be a free state.
Virginia and West Virginia.
Right, exactly.
North Dakota, South Dakota, Virginia, West Virginia. Yep.
That's how that came to be. And that same structure, all they did was they took slavery, plucked that out because it's no longer part of the equation. But other than that, they took it from both sides of the equation. And if you know math, if you take it from both sides of the equation remains unchanged. So now it's red state, blue state. Our history in this country is uninterrupted. Yep. It just kind of gets a better look from time to time as we clean little pieces up. But sorry.
Sorry.
What is repatriation? I heard that mentioned.
I'm not sure how it would fit in the discussion, because repatriation would be basically America, those of us who want to go back to Africa, paying to get us back there. Right. Okay. So that, which is an interesting thing, and I'll try to keep it really short. But
yeah,
think about from the time that we were enslaved here in America, there has always been a back to Africa movement. Now, with Marcus Garvey that we talked about here recently, that gelled. And it was a matter of the Pan-African, let's move back to the motherland, right? Because we were free people at that point. But from the beginning, there has been a call, a demand, a cry to just send us back. We can't afford to go back because you keep us poor. Like we can't go back on our own because we're poor and you keep us poor. But if you'll pay for us to go, just like you paid for us to be here, deuces, and those who want to stay will stay, right? America, every time a racist wants to get in your face, one of the first things they say to you is, why don't you go back where you came from? Hey, pay for it to happen, give me some money so I can go, and I'll roll. But the fact is, America doesn't want us to go.
And they
It
don't want
never
us to
has wanted
stay.
us to go.
I always
It
wanted,
doesn't
I
want us
always love
here.
that argument. Go back where you
Yeah.
belong. And I always want to look at them and go, oh, so you're a Native American? What tribe are you? Oh, so you need to go back where you belong.
Because that only applies to other people,
Yeah, that's my point. Like,
right?
dude, I'm sorry, you was not. You're not from here.
I
I
would
know you're
ask
looking
them.
at me from racist eyes and saying, "Go back where you belong" because you see my skin color, and I don't even have to even know anything about you. But unless you are a Native American, you need to go back where you belong to. Then, if we're going to go this tit
And the
for
funny
tat,
thing,
and I'm petty because I don't care, then you need to go back where you belong to.
about that argument as well is like it gets complicated. So, like we say, the only people who truly have a true claim to this land are the indigenous people, which is kind of a misnomer because they weren't the only ones here. But generally speaking, yes, okay. But
Yeah, just a
to
simple
do
fact.
that, yeah, but to do that, you have to unravel the complexity of that which is history. Right? It's like playing a game of Risk. Are we supposed to just clear the table and everybody go back? Now what? You're gonna cram all these white people into Europe? You're gonna cram all the black people into Africa? And you're gonna cram it doesn't make sense, right?
Mhm.
Oh, I'm trying
There
to
was
think.
a war fought.
Yeah.
The Native Americans lost. The conquerors kept the land. Right? That's one line of argument that flows, and it's the flow across history, right? So it gets real muddled when we start trying to roll it back that way. But you do look at it and say, but was it a normal war or were atrocities committed? And the fact that there were atrocities committed is why the Native Americans or indigenous people were fully entitled to reparations. You don't get the country back. You didn't own it that way. That wasn't how you even structured your society. But you are entitled to be repaired to some extent because of the atrocities. And that is the argument that we are making as descendants of slaves. It's not saying, hey, give us Texas.
We don't want Texas. We
It's
don't
what
want
you've done for
Texas.
others. What you have
Yeah,
done for
you keep
others, do
Texas.
that for us.
But
No, I'll take Texas if you can get rid of some of the people.
like what, 90% of the population? Nah.
You
You know,
can look. You
But
can give me Houston and San Antonio
yeah,
and
maybe Dallas, maybe
Corpus
like 5
Christi,
cities in
but the rest
Texas.
of y'all
You can have Arkansas,
y'all can
Alabama,
see
have
y'all.
Georgia,
Austin.
Florida.
I'm
See, that's
sorry,
why we got to
and
make sure y'all
Austin.
can't be in the room for the negotiation.
No,
Cause
we sure
y'all,
can't. I just give me California,
Houston.
Washington, Oregon, Hawaii. I wouldn't even give me Indiana. And heck, I live here. I'm like, nah, we don't want Indiana. Nope, nope.
I tell y'all what. I tell you what. I make a deal with you. Y'all can have Texas.
Sure can
Y'all
have
can
it.
have it. Y'all can have Texas. I'm not going to argue with you. Discuss. Y'all can have Texas.
In Arizona. Take Arizona with
I
it.
got that anyway. Y'all can have Texas.
I told you the 5 states I want.
Give me Puerto Rico.
well, right now, I used to say that, but the ocean's trying to eat Puerto Rico. Plus, Puerto Rico is full of its own indigenous population, so that's a little different too. But
Give me Washington
but I'm with
D.C.
you.
then.
That used to be my plan. But no, but here's the thing. If America was sincere about what they were doing, now, first of all, hold the other way. America is going to do what America's going to do until it's pushed to do something different. It only reacts to threats of force of some level. And so long as we're disjointed and we're in love with our historical oppressors and we just want to get along and all that stuff, you'll never be able to have a coordinated effort that would actually push them to do anything. And the threat that we actually would be able to pose to America is not one of force. Those days are over. Okay? If you try to do this as a way of force, you will be slaughtered.
Right.
Those days are done. Look at Russia and Ukraine right now. It doesn't work out, folks. So what you would do is you look at where's your leverage lie? What are the things that America is desperately attached to the Black community for? The few things that they allow us to make wealth in: entertainment, sports, food. Okay. Oh, and government employees. Like more the black people who are in the middle class, more of us work for the government than not. Okay, because the private system still screws us over left and right. But those are areas that we have leverage. So you decide, you know what? We're not going to play football. We're not going to play basketball. Or if we do, we quiet as kept. Just say, you know what? Okay, I got a deal that any deal that I get as an individual player across the board, any deal I get that pays me more than $2 million a year, that excess over $2 million, I'm going to push back into the community and build and do and all these different things. You do that. So you're already making big money. You're not making the $12 million contract per se. I mean, you are, right? Because this has to be underneath the table kind of work. But you do that and watch how fast America adjusts to you. We decide none of our young athletes, male or female, will go to any PWI schools, will only go to HBCUs. First of all, they will punish us because they've done it in the past, just a few years ago. Yep. But after that punishment, what came out of that? Deion Sanders and a whole nother class of black coaches and leaders who have now elevated HBCUs up a whole nother level. So don't be afraid of the white lash, right? Because there will always be white lash, but you understand that after that, you can still elevate. So those are the things we can do minus the government. With the government, now it becomes you got to be even more disciplined. Now you got to realize, first of all, and this is my communication to my black brothers and sisters, we got to stop doing the same things to each other that we complain the white people have done to us. And by that, I mean, you can't sit here and demonize women. You can't scapegoat them for everything that's wrong in the community. That means you can't reject your queer family members and friends. Because guess what? They're still us. That means you can't be busy fighting against every Latino up and down the street because he took my job. Those are your cousins too. You got to start, we'd have to be serious about building the bridges and repairing the wounds across other vulnerable communities. And now we can go against the government and say, you know what? There might only be 4 black people in the Senate, but there's 12 black people, gay people, queer people, Latinos in the Senate. We're 12%. You got to do what we want. That's how you play the game inside the government. That's how you get to 40 acres and a mule reparations. But the problem is no one wants to do either one of those because we're so individualized that we think each of us is just out to screw each other over.
Okay. As he mute himself. As he mute himself to make sure he don't say nothing. Well, I applaud everybody to please go out and study this a little more on your